what if we heard from the person actually responsible for this regime change? Marco Rubio.
We begin today with Secretary of State Marco Rubio, who joins us.
Here's the guy actually responsible. So here's my thinking on what's happened here, okay? This is my total play-by. This is the complete this is my lore video, okay? We're doing Vati video stuff here, all right? Not just Vosh video. My assessment, all right? So Trump is not the only one who's had a hard-on for Venezuela for a long time, right? There is a bunch of overlapping interests here. There are geopolitical reasons to want to stop the flow of oil out of Venezuela, to secure more oil in the Western Hemisphere, to control Venezuela, to halt an enemy. There are political purposes, there are economic purposes. There are many reasons why the United States might want to squelch Maduro, right? The problem is that nation building and regime changes are both really, 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 really difficult. So there's a lot of evidence to support this. This is not just my amazing brain and detective work, okay? There are people reporting on this, but I think the gist of it is this, okay? Maduro has been doing a bad job of running Venezuela. He's been doing a bad job, and he's been doing a bad job for too long. He doesn't just run Venezuela on his own. He runs it jointly with a bunch of cronies and generals and other people in positions of power over whom he has indirect control, but not total, right? I think what happened here is that he was given up. This was a negotiated exchange. Whether or not Maduro himself is in on it, I have no idea. It's possible that he was because the alternative was being killed. Totally possible. It's possible that he wasn't, right? What I think the deal was President Trump wants a win, right? He wants a win down here with Maduro, and he wants Venezuela to fall in line. So he speaks with, the powers that be in Venezuela, not just Maduro, but his generals, people in charge. And he essentially says, here's how it's going to go down. Either you give us Maduro and we pretend that this was a completely unnegotiated exchange, or we just go in and kill him. Either way, somebody else takes charge. But the next person to take charge will know, without a doubt, that if they fuck up and don't listen to us in the future, they're next. So we get to exercise a flex. We get to demonstrate our power, political win for Donald Trump, but meaningfully, the situation does not change. I think that when Donald Trump said we would be running Venezuela and that we might have troops on the ground, he was just repeating what he had been told. And the reason he had been told that was because Marco Rubio was trying to sell him on the idea. Marco Rubio doesn't want to tell Trump we're basically just doing a fake exchange here, like nothing's meaningfully changing, we're just getting an optical win, because if he told Trump that, Trump would tell the press that. Can you imagine Trump saying that? Like Trump going up there after the kidnapping and saying, yeah, we did this because we worked it out with the generals. Now the generals are in charge. The narco generals are in charge now, you know? He would just say that. So I think that Marco Rubio pitched Trump on a stronger idea, one in which we have direct control. And I don't think we do. Look, just a couple hours ago, Donald Trump, in a telephone interview with The Atlantic, basically affirmed this. He issued a threat to Venezuela's interim president, Delcy Rodriguez, saying, if she doesn't do what's right, she is going to pay a very big price, probably bigger than Maduro. There you go. I don't know. It seems pretty straightforward to me, right? My guess is that she was not complicit in Maduro's kidnapping. Rather, Trump and the people around Trump probably coordinated with the generals underneath Maduro, which is why there was basically no resistance when they went in, by the way. They were able to snatch Maduro like really, really quickly. He was probably betrayed by people close to him. They get Maduro, the generals get to stay in charge, and now the interim president, you know, she understands the score, which is you get to run Venezuela, but don't, right, like, you know what's up. Yeah, 0 American losses is pretty sus. Like, I know we're well-trained and well-armed and well-armored, but storming a presidential palace with no casualties is pretty impressive. I think that's probably the most likely version of what happened, the most likely version of what went down. So what we're hoping for now, or, well, by we, I guess, I mean American empire, is that the new leadership of Venezuela is going to be much more cooperative when it comes to working with us. Keep in mind, Maduro himself was willing to work with us. He was willing to negotiate. He was conciliatory in the past few months, you know, towards negotiations with America. So we know leadership in Venezuela is willing to work with us, but it makes us look weaker if we work with Maduro rather than ousting Maduro and pretending that the next people up are just much more agreeable to us, rather than us having negotiated Maduro's exit with those same people. Does that make sense? So it's easier to do this from in like a real politics sense. This is like the easier way of doing things. Fuck. So even Maduro got cucked. Well, I don't know if Maduro was if he co-signed on this deal. It's very possible that Maduro's like deal was, if you don't give yourself up, we'll just kill you. Because that could have easily like not necessarily even from American special forces. It's possible he was told to by the generals. Like the generals might have just said, this is what's going to happen and you will get captured. And if you somehow evade capture, like your bodyguards will kill you. You will make your way into the safe house. You will escape American special forces. And then the men in there with you will shoot you dead. Right? At least here you get to live it up cozy in a prison cell in New York for a while or whatever. That's one way to decapitate a state. I don't think it's going to make much of a difference for the long run in Venezuela. Venezuela might become more cooperative to American interests, but I again, like there is not much financial motivation for oil companies to set up extraction in Venezuela. They might increase extraction a little bit, but America is a net exporter of oil, and we have the ability to open up new refineries and extraction facilities in our own borders. I just don't, I really do think this has more to do with political power. I think this is Monroe Doctrine shit, you know? It's not about oil. They say it's about oil because that's the economic pitch. They say it's about drugs because that's the political pitch. In reality, Trump just wanted to depose an enemy of America. It could have been anything, right? And by the way, I really, really think that for one, this whole thing was definitely Marco Rubio's bit. I think that he's going to go after Cuba. Like, Venezuela is peanuts to Marco Rubio compared to Cuba. Cuba's, I mean, he's literally like a fucking child of the Batista regime. It's funny, by the way. Marco Rubio likes to pretend that his family fled the Castro regime. They didn't. His family fled the Batista regime, the fascist one Castro replaced. They are explicitly stating that they're interested in going after Cuba. I mean, we're going to see this in this interview. Anyway, that's my understanding of what took place here. I think it's pretty likely. I think it's more likely than anything else I've seen, any other argument that I've heard. I did not brain math that all myself. I mean, I saw other people talking about it. That seems most likely to me, you know? And to that point, yeah, what about Panama and Greenland? One thing at a time, buddy, okay? Does this mean Cuba's doomed? One thing at a time. Marco Rubio is the guy orchestrating this. Let's take a look at what he has to say.
Is working with Maduro's vice president, Delcy Rodriguez. Why does the administration oppose working with the opposition leader, Maria Corina Machado? She's the Nobel Peace Prize winner, of course.
This also explains, by the way, why they were not willing to work with Maria Machado, because she wasn't accepted by the generals. This answers it perfectly. They literally had like an opposition candidate lined up. Why is she not the person taking over? Well, because if this deal was orchestrated with the generals, they don't want to work for her. They don't want. They're not doing that. To them she's a nobody. This has nothing to do with the will of the people or democracy or anything like that. This is just fuck her, right? She's out in the cold. She's going to spend the rest of her life in Miami.
As well, her coalition has the support of 70% of Venezuelans. Why not work with her?
Well, a couple things. First of all, Maria Corina Machado is fantastic, and she's someone I've known for a very long time.
But the generals don't like her.
The whole movement is. But we are dealing with the immediate reality. The immediate reality is.
That's why Trump said she didn't have the support. That's true. In the press conference, Trump literally just straightforwardly said she doesn't have the support. What the fuck does he mean by that? If he then says it's okay for the vice president, the woman under Maduro, to take charge, a person who he thinks the rule of is illegitimate, what does he mean when he says that Maria Machado doesn't have the support? He doesn't mean of the people. He means of the fucking generals.
Is that unfortunately, and sadly, but unfortunately, the vast majority of the opposition is no longer present inside of Venezuela. We have short-term things that have to be addressed right away. We all wish to see a bright future for Venezuela, a transition to democracy. All of these things are great, and we all want to see that. I've worked on that for 15 years on a personal level, both in the Senate and now as National Security Advisor and Secretary of State. These are things I still care about. We still care about. But what we're talking about is what happens over the next 2-3 weeks, 2-3 months. States and how that ties to the national interest of the United States. And so we expect to see more compliance and cooperation than we were previously receiving with Nicolas Maduro.
Pretty much like straightforwardly saying it, you know? God, is this 2003? No, I'm afraid this is like a lot worse. Saddam Hussein was much worse than Maduro. I'm not defending the invasion of Iraq. The invasion of Afghanistan was a lot more justifiable than the invasion of Iraq. Like, the Taliban's pretty bad. I mean, the invasion of Iraq ended up chaining out into ISIS in a way that it didn't really happen with Afghanistan. Neither should have happened, of course, but, you know, the message here basically seems to be like, now that we know for sure that nobody can stop us because nobody's willing to even try to stop us, we can just go after anyone, you know? We can do what we like. Honestly, this logic snowballs like pretty quickly. Guys, the Trump administration just this morning said that the rule of Claudia Sheinbaum was illegitimate. One of the most popular leaders in the world.
You could not make a deal or an arrangement. Although he, by the way, was given very generous offers. He could have left Venezuela as recently as, you know, a week and a half ago. There were opportunities available for him to avoid all of this because he's not someone we can work with. He suckered the Biden administration into stupid deals. He's made a career out of not keeping deals and figuring out how to save himself by buying time. And President Trump was not going to fall into that trap. So now there are other people in charge of the military and police apparatus there. They're going to have to decide now what direction they want to go. And we hope they will choose a different direction than the one Nicolas Maduro picked. Ultimately, we hope this leads to a holistic transition all the way around in Venezuela, societal, political, all of that. We're in favor of all of that. But right now, we have to take the first steps. And the first steps are securing what's in the national interest of the United States and also beneficial to the people of Venezuela. And those are the things that we're focused on right now. No more drug trafficking, no more Iran, Hezbollah presence there, and no more using the oil industry to enrich all our adversaries around the world.
Us invading Mexico is the worst case scenario. Look, I think it is very likely that what we have done to Venezuela happens in some form to Cuba. I don't think we could do it to Mexico because, for one, Mexico is a much wealthier and more developed country than Venezuela. Venezuela is a pariah of the entire world. Their only allies are Russia, China, basically. Like, they don't have friends. Mexico is globally beloved. Like, Mexico is a developed nation with like regular diplomatic ties all over the world. Also, Claudia Sheinbaum is genuinely very popular. Also, we have like a massive contiguous border with Mexico, so the consequences of geopolitical instability right there would be really immediately felt. With all that being said, we could get away with doing this to Cuba.
World and not benefiting the people of Venezuela, or frankly benefiting the United States and the region.
You talk about a holistic transition. I think there's a lot of focus on potential elections. How soon will elections be held? Within 30
I appreciate this interview is being conducted while he's in fucking Miami.
days, Mr. Secretary?
Elections? Well, look, this is a country that's been governed by this regime now for 14 or 15.
Elections? What are you, buddy? What are you talking about? It's the same fucking military cartel in charge. What are you? I can't fucking believe how transparent this administration is. They really are. Like, they will censor all the Epstein files, but they'll be so incompetent in the handling of the political game around the Epstein files that they all come out anyway. The Epstein files did not come out under Biden. They got fucking forced out under Trump, you know? Likewise with this. Elections? Elections? What the fuck do you think we're doing here? Spreading democracy?
In 30 days, Mr. Secretary?
Elections? Well, look, this is a country that's been governed by this regime now for 14 or 15 years. The elections should have happened a long time ago. The elections did happen. They lost them, and they didn't count the votes, or they refused to count the votes, and everyone knows it. So all of that, I think, is premature at this point. There's a lot of work to be done here. Right now, what we are focused in, let's be realistic here, what we are focused on right now is all of the problems we had with when Maduro was there, we still have those problems in terms of them needing to be addressed. We are going to give people an opportunity to address those challenges and those problems. Until they address it, they will continue to face this oil quarantine. They will continue to face pressure from the United States. We will continue to target drug boats if they try to run towards the United States. We will continue to seize the boats that are sanctioned with court orders. We will continue to do that and potentially other things until the things we need to see addressed are addressed. Because ultimately, above everything else, we care about elections, we care about democracy, we care about all of that. But the number one thing we care about is the safety, security, well-being, and prosperity of the United States. And that's what we're going to focus on first and foremost here. And that's what these policies, these changes we need to see made.
Oh boy, oh boy, oh boy. Trump on Saturday compared Cuba's situation to that of Venezuela. These are just recaps from what we saw the other day. Telling reporters, I think Cuba is going to be something we'll end up talking about because Cuba is a failing nation right now, a very badly failing nation, and we want to help the people. He added, it's very similar to Venezuela in the sense that we want to help the people in Cuba, but we also want to help the people that were forced out of Cuba and are living in this country. Yeah, because they're like 95% Trump voters. Rubio added on Sunday that Cuban officials were with Maduro in Venezuela ahead of his capture. It was the Cubans that guarded Maduro. He was not guarded by Venezuelan bodyguards. He had Cuban bodyguards. Rubio added that Cuban bodyguards were also in charge of internal intelligence in Maduro's government, including who spies on who inside to make sure there are no traitors. Those are all Cubans. We're doing the CQ right now, you know? Like, we've knocked down Venezuela, but who's the big threat? The big Latin American threat. Anyway, let's take a look at the Face of the Nation interview.
This morning from Miami. Good morning to you, Mr. Secretary.
Good morning. Good morning.
Not
President
evil.
Trump.
Anyone else think he looks a little bit like John Cena? I know that's not a very favorable comparison to Mr. Cena, but you see a little bit of the facial structure, right? Okay, some people in chat are agreeing. A lot of you are lying and pretending that it's not true.
Said that the United States will run the country and that Venezuela will be largely run by, he pointed to you and some of the other cabinet members when he spoke to the public yesterday. He said the U.S. retains all military options, including boots on the ground, until U.S. demands have been fully met. How do you plan to run the country?
Well, first of all, I think the important thing to point out is that the key to what that regime relies on and is their economy fueled by oil. And right now, it is an oil industry that is backwards and really needs a lot of help and work in terms of it. And not only that, but it doesn't help the people. None of the money from the oil gets to the people. It's all stolen by the people that are on the top there. And so that's why we have a
As opposed to the United States, where all the wealth generated by our oil companies flows down to the people, you know, freely.
There's a quarantine right now in which sanctioned oil shipments, there's a boat and that boat is under U.S. sanctions. We go get a court order, we will seize it. That remains in place. And that's a tremendous amount of leverage that will continue to be in place until we see changes, not just further the national interest of the United States, which is number one, but also that lead to a better future for the people of Venezuela. And so that's the sort of control the president is pointing to when he says that. We continue with that quarantine. And we expect to see that there will be changes, not just in the way the oil industry is run for the benefit of the people, but also so that they stop the drug trafficking, so that we no longer have these gang problems, so that they kick the FARC and the ELN.
This is so depressing, dude. It's going to be even more depressing when they pull it off in Cuba, too. Cuba is similar in a lot of ways and difficult in a lot of ways. Cuba is also a borderline failed state with a corrupt government that the people don't like very much. But I don't think that they're as... So my understanding is that the Cuban government is ideologically opposed to the government of the United States in a very, like, post-Soviet holdover kind of way, in the way that the Venezuelan government isn't. Like, the Venezuelan government is mostly made up of cartel, like, narco lords who really don't give a fuck who they work with. They're just in it for the money. Whereas the people in power in Cuba are, like, actual inheritors of the legacy of Castro, who said that the Soviet Union should nuke the world and that he thought the Cuban people would be willing martyrs in a global nuclear holocaust if it meant destroying the United States. So I think that they're a little bit more ideologically motivated, which means it would be harder to find people on the inside to work with, which means that in all likelihood, a U.S. Like kidnapping operation in Cuba would actually lead to U.S. service members dying, and it would be a whole thing. It would be harder to do, yeah. That being said, the Cuban government is still not popular and not competent, though the sanctions definitely don't help. Does Cuba have oil? Nah, they get most of their fuel from Venezuela, I think. So, we'll see how that goes.
Out, and that they no longer cozy up to Hezbollah and Iran in our own hemisphere.
But what you are talking about is more of a sanctions pressure, not boots on the ground.
Maybe we should look into Delcy Rodriguez, the acting president of Venezuela. My read on this is that she was not one of the collaborators who ousted Maduro. My read on this is that this was done either with or without Maduro's awareness, like by his generals, and that she is she was blindsided, basically, because her history suggests that she's an authentic person, a more competent leader than Maduro, and less corrupt, and also like a true believer. So yeah, I'm not sure. The military endorse her? Yes, the military does endorse her, yeah, but I don't know if she would sign off on selling out Maduro to work with the United States. I could be wrong on that. That's just my read. I have no idea.
So just to be clear, there is no plan for U.S. occupation of this country of nearly 30 million people.
Cuba also has a 1980s Soviet air defense system, which Venezuela doesn't have. It is true that you could not fly a bunch of Chinook helicopters into Havana and not have them shot down. Yeah.
Well, I think, first of all, the president always retains optionality on anything and on all of these matters. He certainly has the ability and the right under the Constitution of the United States to act against imminent and urgent threats against the country. That said, and all of that said, right now, I think what you see as a force posture was one of the largest naval deployments in modern history, certainly in the Western Hemisphere, and it is capable of stopping not just drug boats, but stopping any of these sanctioned boats that come in and out, and really paralyzing that portion of how the regime, generates revenue. So that will continue to be in place. What the president has said, obviously, is, and I think what he's pointing to is that this obsession people have about boots and this or that, but he does not feel like he is going to publicly, rule out options that are available for the United States, even though that's not what you're seeing right now. What you're seeing right now is an oil quarantine that allows us to exert tremendous leverage over what happens next.
Well, he also said the U.S. is
the big implication here, I guess, is that if future Venezuelan leadership does not do what Trump wants, that we're just going to try to do this again or again and again. Like, I don't know where this ends exactly. I don't know what we're extracting from Venezuela, like what concessions we got. It's possible that we're not going to get anything. It's possible that nothing will change. It's literally just like Maduro's out, political win for Trump, Venezuela runs along as normal.
Ready to stage a second and much larger attack if we need to do so. But I'm curious, because you just described the regime as still in place, essentially. I mean, I'm curious why the Trump administration decided to leave it intact and only arrest Nicolas Maduro and his wife, the person who controls the police, the chief thug, Cabello. He's the interior minister. He's been indicted by the United States. He was in that indictment the administration released. He's a narco-terrorist. There's a $25 million price on his head. He's still in place. The defense minister, who has deep ties to Russia, $15 million price on his head. He is still in
These are totally valid questions, yeah. If you actually want to change Venezuela, why aren't you getting rid of the, corrupt thugs who run the country? You're just going after the figurehead. Not to say Maduro didn't have real power. He did, but, obviously Hitler had real power, but if you killed Hitler and did nothing else in 1942, you probably actually would have made Germany stronger. You probably just would have made it more efficient. They would have dedicated less of their economy towards Wunderwaffen or whatever the fuck else he was distracting the goddamn Wehrmacht with, and they could have gotten on with the war.
I'm confused. Are they still wanted by the United States? Why didn't you arrest them if you are taking out the narco-terrorist regime?
You're confused? I don't know why that's confusing to you.
They're still in
What the fuck? He's glitching?
Terrorist regime.
You're confused? I don't know why that's confusing to you.
They're still in power.
It's very simple. You're not going to go in and wrap up. But you can't go.
We're not just going to go in and nab political leaders. What are you talking about? That's crazy.
To go in and suck up 5 people. They're already complaining about this one operation. Imagine the howls.
Internally, he's like, "What the fuck? Didn't Zionists take over CBS? Why am I getting questions?"
Would have from everybody else.
This is why they keep the media completely complicit. By the way, this is why they've spent billions undermining media legitimacy, because these people still fold at any question, literally any pushback, and they're on their fucking hands and knees.
We actually had to go and stay there 4 days to capture 4 other people. We got the top priority. The number one person on the list was the guy who claimed to be the president of the country that he was not. And he was arrested along with his wife, who was also indicted. And that was a pretty sophisticated...
Notice, by the way, that if he wasn't working with the generals and with the other higher-ups in Venezuela, his answer would have been, we only really had the operational capacity to take one person. It was difficult enough taking the president. Taking the president along with a bunch of his cronies in one swoop with no casualties would have been an impossible task. That's a normal answer. If he said that, it would have sounded fine. But he doesn't want to say that because he cut a deal with those people. He doesn't want to say anything that would imply that they were also on the cards, because if he said that, they might believe it and not work with him in the future.
And frankly, complicated operation.
It was.
It is not easy to land helicopters in the middle of the largest military base in the country. The guy lived on a military base. Land within 3 minutes, kick down his door, grab him, put him in handcuffs, read him his rights, put him in a helicopter, and leave the country without losing any American or any American assets. That's not an easy mission. And
he did eventually settle on this answer, but I really do think the incredulity in his voice at the beginning gives away, like, the problem here, you know? He's also still not, like, implicating those people. He hasn't said anything negative about them. Isn't that interesting? Like, those two guys are really bad. Head of police and head of military. There's a reason why Maduro's head of police has a higher bounty on him than the head of defense. Like, he's a pretty bad guy. Torture, murder, lots of murder.
You're asking me why didn't we do that in 5 other places at the same time? I mean, that's absurd. I do think this is one of the most, daring, complicated, sophisticated missions this country has carried out in a very long time. Tremendous credit to the U.S. military personnel who did it. It was unbelievable, and tremendous success. And today, an indicted drug trafficker who was not the legitimate president of Venezuela, who we don't recognize, the Biden administration didn't recognize, 60-something countries don't recognize, the European Union doesn't recognize, and many countries in Latin America don't recognize. He was.
I think this confirms it's so fucking hard, man. Like, everything about the incredulity, the panic at the beginning of the question, the fact that his answer didn't implicate the people that he was asked about. Like, he never said anything like they're a miserable thug or I wish I could have gone after them. Nothing like, we didn't have the ability to capture like 5 people at once, but, honestly, I wish we could have because those people are awful. Nothing like that. We were 100% cutting back from deals with those guys. Not to mention, like, logistically, they might have given up Maduro, but there's no way special forces could have captured their fucking head of police that easily unless we had an insider, like, working. These people are, like, paranoid narco cartel dictator crime lord. Like, they're sleeping in bunkers. You know what I mean? They're not, like, easy captures or whatever. These are people who they sleep with pistols under their pillow, okay? They press a red button like underneath their nightstand and the fucking safe room door opens up. These are not easy people to go after. Do you remember how hard of a time we had getting bin Laden and Saddam Hussein? Like, it's if a leader does not want to be captured, it's actually really fucking difficult to capture them. If they,
convicted. He was a indicted drug trafficker. He was arrested. His wife was arrested. Also
but
indicted.
Others,
and they
if they made a deal, why would they threaten the VP? Why wouldn't they? Also, because I think that the VP is just like the next one in line. I think they're in on it. I don't think that she's in on it. I think that the VP is now the person who the generals are allowing to take charge. But I think that she probably was not directly involved in the negotiations to negotiate Maduro's exit. Not necessarily a puppet, but the military endorses her. Sure, why wouldn't they?
Also indicted are still
system of courts.
The others who were also indicted are still in place. So that's the point of my questioning there. But you talked about not being the legitimate
So you wanted
president.
us to land in 5 other military bases?
No, I'm asking why you chose that this was the limit of the military operation. But to your point that you just made, that Maduro was not the legitimate president.
He was the guy who was claiming to be the president.
Right. Well, the opposition.
He was the top target.
Okay. The opposition.
She's like really fucking whiny, dude. Jesus Christ.
Leader Maria Corina Machado and Edmundo Gonzalez won that 2024 election by your own account. They were some of the first people you called when you were Secretary of State. You said Edmundo Gonzalez is the rightful president of Venezuela. Is that still the U.S. policy? And if so, are you working on a transition to have those elected leaders run the country?
Well, I think a couple things. I have tremendous admiration for Maria Corina Machado. I have admiration for Edmundo. We have all those views about what the election that happened the last time, and not only us, but many other countries around the world. There's that. And there's the mission we are on right now. We have been very clear from the beginning, because I still think that a lot of people analyze everything that happens in foreign policy through the lens of what happened from 2001 to 2015 or 16. The whole, foreign policy apparatus thinks everything is Libya, everything is Iraq, everything is Afghanistan. This is not the Middle East. And our mission here is...
Notice how he didn't answer the fucking question? Hey, here's a woman who is, by our standards, the rightful ruler of Venezuela, who you previously, endorsed. Why is she going to be the next one up? The generals didn't accept her.
Very different. This is the Western Hemisphere. Within the Western Hemisphere, we have a country, potentially a very rich country, that has cozied itself up under the control of this regime, has cozied up to Iran, has cozied up to Hezbollah, has allowed narco trafficking gangs to operate with impunity from their own territory, allows boats with drugs to traffic from their territory, and we are addressing that. And by the way, 9 million people in the largest mass migration event in modern history have left that country since 2014.
But that regime is still in
having
place.
An impact on us. That is what we are addressing now.
When you spoke yesterday,
but we're not just addressing
our country's not allowed to have their own foreign policy. Marco Rubio's position on this explicitly, not even implicitly, is that the Americas belong to America. He's a Mearsheimer guy, right? He thinks that the Western... I see Vermin. Yes, I can head over. At that time, he thinks the Western Hemisphere belongs to America, just like they are our puppets. They belong to us.
We are addressing the factors that are a threat to the national interest of the United States.
Understood. You spoke with Delcy Rodriguez, who is now, according to President Trump, sworn in as the president, as the leader of Venezuela. Did she promise you that she is expelling all those American adversaries from Venezuelan territory? What exactly did she agree to do when she spoke to you?
We are going to, our objectives when it comes to how Venezuela...
Another great indication of how little we've accomplished here is that the administration has not been talking about the freedom of the Americans who were seized in Venezuela in the days leading up to the extradition of Maduro. Maduro had a feeling that we were going to nab him or kill him, so he started taking Americans hostage in the days beforehand. We've not even been talking about it. Normally, that would be a huge deal, right? Think Iranian embassy hostages, right? Yet the fact that he was doing that also makes me think he was not a willful participant in his own capture. How many hostages? 5, I think? That'd be my guess.
The national interest.
What happened to those Americans? I don't know. I haven't heard about them. It's pretty weird. You'd think normally something like that would be a bigger talking point.
The United States have not changed, and we want those addressed. We want drug trafficking to stop. We want no more gang members to come our way. We don't want to see the Iranian and, by the way, Cuban presence in the past. We want the oil industry in that country not to go to the benefit of pirates and adversaries of the United States, but for the benefit of the people. We want to see all of that happen. We insist on
in the
seeing
United
that
States.
happen.
Did she promise
and we are
that?
going to work to continue to see that happen. Well, right now, we are going to see what happens moving forward. Let me just say that. I'm not obviously going to have these conversations in the media. These are delicate and complicated things that require mature statesmanship, and that's what we intend to do. But our goals remain...
Are you implying you don't have that? I mean, we know that you don't, but it's kind of weird for you to say that. These are difficult questions that would require me to be good at my job? Okay.
The same. The difference is that the person who was in charge, even though not legitimately, in the past was someone you could not work with. We just could not work with him. He is not a person
I really think this whole thing is a dry run for Cuba.
Deals he made, broke every deal he ever made a fool out of the Biden administration on the deal they made with him. And we offered him on multiple occasions an opportunity to remove himself from the scene in a positive way. He chose not to do so.
But his number 2 is now running the country. His number 2 is someone you can work with. And is that what you're implying here? And did she tell you that she will transition to democracy? And the woman who won the election along with her partner there, Maria Corina Machado.
We are going to make our assessments of people. You're asking me to make an assessment. We're going to make an assessment on the basis of what they do. Not what they say publicly in the interim, not what, what they've done in the past in many cases, but what they do moving forward. So we're going to find out. You're asking me, do I know what decisions people are going to make? I don't. I do know this, that if they don't make the right decisions, the United States will retain multiple levers of leverage to ensure that our interests are protected.
Yeah.
And that includes the oil quarantine that's in place, among other things.
Well,
but we are going to judge moving forward. We're going to judge everything by what they do. And we're going to see what they do.
Okay, because yesterday,
Why does she keep being our democracy? Because the fact that they're not running with Maria Cochado proves that they worked with the generals. If they are actually interested in ousting the Maduro regime and implementing democracy in Venezuela, why are we letting Maduro's vice president stay in power and not backing the person who was clearly being primed to run Venezuela as the opposition to Maduro?
Trump said Maria Corina Machado doesn't have the support or respect within the country, and by your own admission, she walloped Nicolas Maduro in the last election. So it does sound like a decision was made. But
she wasn't on the ballot in the last election.
No, but her party was.
Edmundo was.
Yes.
Correct.
So
it was an illegitimate election, and that's why he's not a legitimate president.
Right, but is there an agreement to transition to democracy?
It sounds like there's not. I think what the president pointed out is the obvious. Well, I think what the point is, but there's have to be a little realism.
See,
here.
He gets actually flustered by this. By realism, he means realpolitik. Realism here in this case is like, of course we're not giving democracy, like we made the deal we could make. There's no deal you can make to make Venezuela a democracy, which is true.
Okay, a transition to they've had this regime, they've had this system of Chavismo in place for 15 or 16 years.
It's really fucking bleak because, like, at least in our invasion of Iraq and Afghanistan, I'm not going to say we tried our best to nation build, because we definitely didn't, but there was an effort and there was a stated intention, right? In both Iraq and Afghanistan, and before in Japan and Germany, right? In previous nation building efforts, there has been at least like a stated goal here. There's been a narrative. But now it's like, we can't do that, which is true. But then, like, what are we doing? In Panama, the United States stayed until after elections were held. Yeah, that's true. In Panama, yeah. Like, and it's crazy that we're in a position now where, like, things are more cynical and more bleak than they were in fucking Panama.
Everyone's asking why 24 hours after Nicolas Maduro was arrested, there isn't an election scheduled for tomorrow? That's absurd.
I'm asking what you talked about with her.
These things take time. There's a process.
Right. And you are...
I'm not going to publicly get into details about any of those things, other than to tell you that our expectations remain the same. And we are going to judge whoever we're interacting with moving forward by whether or not those conditions are met. Of course we want to see Venezuela transition to be a place completely different than what it looks like today. But obviously we don't have the expectation that's going to happen in the next 15 hours. Right. What we do have an expectation is that it move in that direction. We think it's in our national interest and, frankly, in the interest of people of Venezuela.
The president used the word oil 20 times in his press conference. You talked about these tremendous oil assets that Venezuela has.
Okay, it's not about that, man. It's not about that. The obsession with oil makes so much more sense when you think of it as what he pitched to Donald Trump while privately just wanting to use this as a dry run for Cuba. It makes so much more sense. Because like the oil thing just does not math up. It does not math up at all. They literally, Axios was interviewing, or Politico or Axios, I forget which one, interviewing oil execs, asking if they had any interest in opening up extraction facilities there, and they said no. So this only really makes sense as a dry run.
But the president's last envoy to Venezuela, Elliot Abrams, is publicly arguing that you know better than the policy you're backing. He said, quote, Venezuelan plutocrats or U.S. oil executives seem to be coming to Mar-a-Lago and whispering about how easy life would be if we just made a deal with the regime once Maduro was gone. Is that what happened here?
No, that's not what happened here. What happened here is that we arrested a narco-trafficker who's now going to stand trial in the United States for the crimes he's committed against our people for 15 years. And the person who helped him, of course, his wife, who was co-located with him, so she was arrested as well. That's what happened here. As far as oil, look, oil is critical, not just to fueling economies all over the world. It's critical to Venezuela's future. Their oil industry is completely destroyed. It's destroyed all those oil fields that used to produce a lot and wealth for their country and their people. Those things are decrepit. They're bankrupt. They need to be
as Masaigu says, the problem is that the facilities in Venezuela are all unmaintained and in shambles, and it would take years and billions to repair and fix, and the oil they get would not be wanted for the same reason there are no new drilling rigs. Like, to understand, listen, okay, oil extraction is not like a gold or diamond mine, where you can do it in a country that is completely fucked. Like in a gold mine, you open the hole in the ground and then you send slaves in there, and the slaves come out with the gold, and if they keep it in their pockets, you shoot them and take their pockets full of gold, and then you just keep doing that and people die and you get gold, okay? Oil extraction is complicated. It's complicated and expensive, especially in Venezuela because of the kind of oil they have down there. The best way for us to in a like sensible way, like in a profitable way, get oil out of Venezuela would be for the country to be stable. It would literally cost less money and take less time to stabilize Venezuela by opening and normalizing trade relations with them than it would be for, like, let me put it this way. Why do you think we're so invested in stability in Saudi Arabia? You know, why do you think we backed Saudi's genocide in Yemen? It's not that we like the Saudis. It's that we understand oil can only flow out of Saudi Arabia consistently and reliably if things are stable there. Look at Russia. Their economy depends entirely on natural resource exports. The moment their refineries started getting targeted, their economy faltered massively. It's not like gold or diamonds. You can't do it like ramshackle. It has to be a consistent, smooth, flowing operation. So the way Venezuela is right now, what do you think would happen if American businesses started opening up extraction facilities? They would get fucking shot. There are so many criminals in Venezuela, cartels and gangs and just people who are belligerent about American occupation. They would hate that shit. Like, it would be, you couldn't do it. Yeah, the cost of the security that you would need around all of those facilities would be obscene. And oil companies know that. And if they wanted to open up new oil rigs, they could do so in America, which is completely stable. It's not about the oil coming to the US, it's about keeping it away from Cuba and BRICS. Well, but BRICS already gets their oil from, like, Russia. I'm pretty sure Venezuela only makes up like 4% of China's oil imports anyway. It's not that huge, right? I agree that there's a broader geopolitical reason to hold the like control over their production, but it's just not. I really just think this is realpolitik. I think that if you run down the list, you find that reason after reason for this being about oil doesn't hold together that well. I'm not saying it's not a factor. Why would they do a dry run for Cuba? Because Cuba is a much harder target than Venezuela, and if we've proven to Trump that he can get a political win doing it with an easy enemy like Maduro, he might be more willing to sign off on doing it on a difficult target like Cuba. Cuba would be probably a much more, for one, nobody knows who rules Cuba. Everyone knows Maduro. So you're not getting like you're not getting an easy snatch on somebody who's considered like a global villain. For two, Cuba's security forces are actually pretty decent, at least compared to Venezuela. That's why they ran Maduro's security, intel, spy, and bodyguard networks, you know? Like, there are people in Cuba who are either directly trained by or descendants of those trained by the Soviets. Like, they're not just a bunch of gangsters, you know? They have Soviet weapons, lots of them. They would be willing to defend themselves. So I think that Cuba is a much harder target. Isn't Rubio Cuban? Mm-hmm. So why go for Cuba? Because Rubio wants nothing more than to sink that island into the sea. That's his entire fucking... Rubio is like is an anime character who is motivated by exactly one grievance that he has had his entire life, okay? It's his entire... He wants to sink Cuba into the sea. He is the most Miami expat. He's literally doing this interview from Miami.
Invested in. It's obvious. They do not have the capability to bring up that industry again. They need investment from private companies who are only going to invest under certain guarantees and conditions. That has to go to the benefit of the Venezuelan people. Right now, all of that wealth is stolen.
A prime Gusano.
It's stolen, and it goes into the hands of oligarchs around the world and the oligarchs inside of Venezuela. A handful of people benefit from it. The people don't benefit from it. On top of that, it's very simple, okay? In the 21st century, under the Trump administration, we are not going to have a country like Venezuela in our own hemisphere, in the sphere.
Mearsheimer, Realpolitik, Monroe Doctrine,
of control and the crossroads for Hezbollah, for Iran, and for every other malign influence in the world. That's just not going to exist.
Marco Rubio, Secretary of State, would love to keep talking to you, but I'm told you are out of...
Trump is a tanky, or I guess more accurately, tankies are neocons, you know? If you think that Russia gets automatic dominion over Ukraine because they're next to each other, that's just a neoconservative geopolitical theory, you know? Always have been. Anyway, this shit is not going to stop, by the way.
We need Greenland for national security, not for minerals. We have so many sites for minerals and oil and everything. We have more oil than any other country in the world. We need Greenland for national security. And if you take a look at Greenland, you look up and down the coast, you have Russian and Chinese ships all over the place.
Is this an old video? No, he said it again. He's saying it in direct response to people questioning whether we would do this to other countries. We might actually do it to Greenland, by the way. All I hear is wind? Really? You didn't hear any speech there? Last clip to end this bit out on.
Go bonkers.
Is the Cuban government the Trump administration's next target, Mr. Secretary? Very quickly.
Well, the Cuban government is a huge problem. Yeah, the Cuban government is a huge problem. First of all,
is that a yes?
Cuba, but I don't think people fully appreciate. I think they're in a lot of trouble. Yes, I'm not going to talk to you about what our future steps are going to be and our policies are going to be right now in this regard, but I don't think it's any mystery that we are not big fans of the Cuban regime, who, by the way, are the ones that were propping up Maduro. His entire, internal security force, his internal security apparatus is entirely controlled by Cubans. One of the untold stories here is how, in essence, you talk about colonization, because I think you said Delcy Rodriguez mentioned that. The ones who have sort of colonized, at least inside the regime, are Cubans. It was Cubans that guarded Maduro. He was not guarded by Venezuelan bodyguards. He had Cuban bodyguards. In terms of their internal intelligence, who spies on who inside to make sure there are no traitors, those are all Cubans.
All right, Secretary.
He's not wrong there again. That's because Cuba has much better trained security personnel than Venezuela, which would make Cuba a much harder target. I don't really think we could do the Chinook helicopter flyover in Havana. I'm pretty sure we would have to bomb the fuck out of them. I don't think we could take their leadership alive. Then did the Cubans backstab Maduro as well? No, I don't think so. After all, we know of at least 80 casualties of Venezuelans in the American raid the other night. So, I mean, I think we probably did also just kill bodyguards. More likely to me, though, would be that the people in Venezuela who approved Maduro's extraction were probably willing to let those bodyguards get killed. You know what I mean? Like, if you gave them details, they'd just be sniped from, like, it'd be over like that, you know? I don't think the Cubans would give up Maduro. Again, my understanding is that everyone involved with the Cuban government is still they're pretty ideologically pure. Maduro? No, the Cubans. So who's guarding the Cubans? Presumably other Cubans. Are you really agreeing Cuba colonized Venezuela? No? I'm saying that Cuba and Venezuela were allies, but Venezuela's government is inept, corrupt, and their bodyguards are probably just like narco thugs. Whereas Cuba's guards, Cuba's security, their intelligence apparatuses are like from the Cold War. A lot of those people are probably like Putin, you know, ghoulish descendants of the Cold War security system. Venezuelan military staff didn't like the Cubans because they were the ones who would investigate and torture them if they were disloyal. That makes sense, yeah. But that does kind of confirm the idea that Cuba would be a much harder target, right? Oh, love? We need to leave it too. Is that okay? Okay. Very, very, very critical support to Cuba. The Cuban government is bad, yeah, but like obviously right now America is the great Satan. There's no comparing. This is very much like a Hamas-Israel thing where you can acknowledge tepidly, right, like offhandedly, with a wave of your backhand that, you know, yes, these people are bad, but you're also dealing with the great Satan here, okay? Cuba is bad, but they're not demonic. Has Cuba responded? Yeah, of course, but saying all the things you would expect. American imperialism, la-di-da. Yeah. So yeah, that's what I think is really happening here.